Welcome to the Harmony Hill Legacy Podcast. Amazingly, we've made it to episode 6. My name's Todd Core, soon to be lead pastor here on the Hill as the time of this recording. And joining me is Pastor John Green, senior pastor, soon to be pastor emeritus, but has provided leadership here on this Hill for over 50 years now. So Pastor John, thank you for joining us for another episode.
Yeah, glad to be here, Todd. This has really been exciting for me. It's been good to kind of go back and rehearse and celebrate a lot of the good things that the Lord has done, and just seeing His hand in so many ways manifesting itself in the life of our family here on the Hill and my personal life. And so it's been good. I really enjoyed the time with you. Good.
Thank you. So today, what I thought we would talk about is many people that are newer to the church may not realize that we shifted denominational affiliation partway through your tenure here.
Right.
We started as BMA and currently are Southern Baptist Convention. And so I thought it might be worth telling the story of how that happened and why. So let me start with this. For those that don't know, what is the BMA and what were some of the things that the Lord did as far as missions and alignment while we were in the BMA?
Okay. All right. Great question. So BMA stands for Baptist Missionary Association. It's usually it's known as BMAA, Baptist Missionary Association of America. Used to be NABA. I'm taking you really far back, about 1950 when I was born. It was North American Baptist Association. And so, but from the time that I was in ministry, it was the BMA. And so the BMA distinguishes itself from the Southern Baptist Convention in that they just had a deal about equal representation, and that there was no big I, little u when it came to the denomination. So in our convention, our position is that a church can send more than 3 messengers. The amount of messengers you send depends on the membership of your church. And so like our church now, with us having over 2,000 members, we could send 10 voting messengers to a conventional meeting.
For the SBC?
For the SBC, yes. If we were BMA, we would only send 3. Didn't matter if we had 10,000 members or 200 members, it would only be 3 messengers. And so it was really big with the missionary Baptists that there be what they called equal representation. The downside of that was, which was one of the reasons that we'll probably get to, I'm sure you're headed that way, as to why we switched from BMA to SBC. But the downside to that position, from my perspective, is that it permits churches who don't have per se a growth desire to have equal say and power in making associational and denominational decisions. And so, they may send in $100 a year or whatever, just as an example, sure, to the work of the denomination, and our church may send in 10,000, and there are things that we would like to do, but they have the power to vote that down, if that makes sense.
It does.
And so, it can make it difficult to move ahead, and the work can be held back. I never saw that, and I certainly don't want to. I'm not putting down the BMA at all. I love them. I have so many good friends in the BMA. But for me, that became a game changer. So anyway, so that's the difference. I think on the big main difference between them. Doctrinally, were the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming from BMA to SBC, and that was one of the things I shared with our church family here when I led our church to go that direction back in 2002, was that we're not making any kind of a doctrinal change. And so that was seamless.
Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, did you grow up BMA, and was that not like the seminary you went to, was that a BMA
Yes.
seminary?
Yes. Yeah. The Baptist Missionary Association of Theological Seminary is in Jacksonville, Texas, 65 miles up the road from here between us and Tyler, and fully accredited seminary. They are in close fellowship with Southwestern Seminary now.
Mm.
And so they have some of the Southwestern profs that will come in and teach there. And most of the professors that I sat under, because I received my Master of Divinity from there, virtually every one of them were trained at Southwestern or any other other conservative theological seminaries. And so, yeah, that's our seminary there, BMA seminary.
So one of the things that this actually came up in a sermon not that long ago, and it may have been actually from Ben Stokes, who grew up here at the church. He's our associate pastor, but his growing up would have been under the BMA terminology.
Yes.
So I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and so when I think of the kids programs, it was terms like RAs, GAs, mission friends, training union, like those were the sort of terms.
Yes.
And he mentioned in a sermon some of the terms for the kids, the boys and the girls growing up. Do you recall what some of those programs were called?
Yeah,
for
usually
kids?
the BMA simply put missions in there with it. So instead of RAs, which was Royal Ambassadors in Southern Baptist work, and in BMA, it was Galileans.
Okay.
Okay, that was Galileans. That's for the boys. The girls were GMAs instead of GAs.
Oh,
So
okay.
Girls Missionary Auxiliary.
Okay.
And so instead of, we had then on Sunday night before worship, we had, I just went blank. Oh, my goodness, Todd. Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
I just drew a blank.
I know we did
haven't
like
used it so
training.
long.
We did like something called Training Union in
Yes.
Southern Baptist world for Sunday night sort of programming. I'm not sure if that was just for the adults or if that was just for like teenagers and kids, but it's just interesting to me some of those terminologies that you grow up
It is.
hearing, and
Yeah.
it's interesting. So sometime around 2002, you led the church to move from the BMA to SBC. Again, not a doctrinal shift, but alignment and associationally a shift. What was that like? What led you to sort of make such a big move in the life of a church?
It was a gradual thing that took place. Probably the main catalyst that for me and I think it was the way the Holy Spirit led me, moved me, because my heart, because I had so many friends in the BMA. I mean, that's where my friends were. These are guys that I was around, from 1972 until 2000. 30 years. That these are the men that I walked with. That we did denominational things together. I was president of the state convention, state association, and I served in leadership on the national level. Our church was the second largest church in the BMA of America, and I mean we went from, of course, very small to being a lead church in the BMA. And I was asked to, and I'm just sharing with you, but there were a lot of doors open for me to go and do revivals, and that's just the way that God was using me.
Sure.
And so my heart was there, my friendships were there, and so I was involved, up to my earlobe, so to speak, in denominational work because I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it grow. Our church was growing. I wanted to see the association grow, churches be planted and that kind of thing. And so I I served on a state committee. It was called the Committee of Seven, and it was assigned the task of what we believe after doing all the study and in-depth thing. What do we believe is the main thing that needs to take place in order for our state association to be able to move forward? We all of our departments, the children's home, which is in Waxahachie now, and it's part of the convention work right now. The convention helps that, our Southern Baptist of Texas Convention. And so we have that. We had our newspaper. We had missions. We had student ministry on college campuses, which was the Association of Baptist Students. And so we had all these were different departments. They were all self-perpetuating. So what that meant was that on a national level as well as on a state level, you had all these departments that were coming to you individually asking for funds. And so it was a continuous...
As a church.
Yeah, coming to our church. And so so I was on this committee, and I mean, blood, sweat, and tears. Gave it everything I had. I took off from the church. I would be in Dallas, or I'd be somewhere in the state having these meetings, and I was the secretary, taking notes, transcribing all this and everything. It's not like I didn't have something to do. And so, but I was doing all this because I believed in it. And so we were doing all this, and it came time at the state meeting for us to give our report. And so the moderator recognized us, and so then our chairman recognized me to come and give our recommendation and make our report. I stood up. Before I could make it to the podium, a brother stands up at the back and he says, "I make a motion that this be tabled." Well, you have to vote on that motion because it got a second. And all it requires is a simple majority. But it takes an 80%, I think it's 80% vote to bring it off of table. Well, it was never going to see the light of day because they knew that we were going to recommend that we have, like we do in our state work, that we have a one man who is like the director of missions, and he's over everything. And he helps to work a budget for everybody, and the money all goes to one pile, and then it's distributed.
Right.
And so you don't have a bunch of these departments coming to you. You just have the state work. And so there were enough that didn't want to change. And so all the work that we had done, it was file 13. It was done. And so I was like, okay, I've given what I'm going to give. My church is my calling. This is where my love is. This is where my heart is. And I've done all I can do to help the BMA, the direction I feel like it needs to go. And so I love everybody. I want to leave well, but I'm done. And so I didn't do anything for a while. We went to a national meeting, and it only confirmed it in my heart. And then I came back and I told the church, I said, I've gone to my last state and national meeting. I'm done. I would like to ask that you consider us realigning ourselves with the Southern Baptist Convention. Our doctrine is the same. That was after we had the conservative resurgence in the convention. So there was absolutely no question, which would have been from the BMA perspective. We were very conservative. And so I said, and I told him, I said, the Southern Baptist Convention is just the BMA on steroids. It's just like, yes. And so I said, this is where we need to go. But I said, look, I realize this is huge. And if my tenure with you and my leadership is not enough to convince you that I'm not going to leave you, but this is what I believe God wants us to do. I'm here for the long haul. But if you say no, I'm okay. This is not the end of the world. But I just want you to know I've done my last with the BMA. I'm done. And so it was almost like crickets. And so, but the church came back and they said, well, Brother John, what do you want us to do? And I said, I want us to join the convention. And so of course, it wasn't that night. It was put out before the church. And we had one family to leave. And when the vote was taken, it was over 95%. It may have been like 98% approval, which was huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and we had one family to leave our church, but the only reason is because this dear brother, his dad was serving in the BMA of Texas. So he said, I can go to family reunions if I stay here. You know, he said, Brother John, I love you. I love our church. But he said, we've got to go. And I said, look, I understand. I get that. But anyway, so I think God just confirmed that in a lot of ways. You know, and we've never looked back. So it's been good.
And then you, in the years since that decision, moved to the Southern Baptist and the Southern Baptist of Texas affiliation. You've served in leadership even in that. What, just for posterity on this podcast, what were some ways that God allowed you to contribute on behalf of our church for the new convention, the Southern Baptist Convention?
Well, Jim Richards, who is executive director and has just, I think 2 years ago stepped back and he retired. He's now executive director emeritus with the convention. Jim has been a real friend. When I petitioned them for membership, well, of course they have somebody come out and they interview you. They of course examine the church and where we are doctrine and that kind of thing. And Jim was just a brother from the very beginning with me, just very gracious and was encouraging. And so he from that point on, Jim did what he could to pull me in. I mean, because I had absolutely no background with the convention, no schooling, no seminary or anything like that. And so he had me on. Eventually, I was a member of the executive committee with the convention, which is like the apex leadership with that. And so I served a full term with that. I just came off of that like a year ago because I realized that I was going to be, stepping back ultimately. And so I was just like, I need to focus on this. Rather than all the trips that have to be made and that kind of thing. And then I also served on the Committee on the Order of Business, which basically operates planning out the yearly conventions. And so I was right in the mix of all that with who was going to be there, who was going to be speaking. And Jim he just promoted me. And so I was, very grateful for him. It helped me to get to know guys and build some relationships, with them. And so the convention, the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention, has from the very beginning just been, very welcoming. And so I remember when I went to the first state convention, it was in Humble, and Dr. Ed Young Sr. was there. He spoke that night, and so he was on the platform with me, and I was going to be voted to be brought in. We were one of the churches, to be brought into the convention. And I can't remember, honestly can't remember how that happened, but I wound up at the mic. And so, I basically told him, I said, there are a lot of you that are here and you've been in the convention all your life. And I said, you have no idea what a blessing this is. I said, I'm here in the convention and this is what I have dreamed of, just the vision, the desire to do more for the kingdom, forward thinking, putting aside those things that hinder us, everything that grieved me about the BMA that I worked, that I love so much that I wanted to see changed, but wasn't going to be at that point, was what was being done in the convention. And so when I went back, it just so happened I was sitting right next to Dr. Young, and he turned to me. I'll never forget this. He turned to me and he held out his hand, and I shook his hand. He said, "Welcome home." And I
What a
said,
moment.
thank you. I feel like I'm at home. I do. And so it was just, there's just been those things that have solidified, my relationship and the feeling that I had led the
Mm,
church the direction God wanted it to go, where she would have a broader opportunity to impact the kingdom
mm.
more.
Amen.
So
I got to go to my first convention with you this in November of 2022,
yeah,
and to be honest, I was a little hesitant to go to the convention just in general because I thought that it might be a little stuffy,
uh,
might be a little old fashioned, and I was so encouraged
mm,
and inspired at that convention because it is a convention as of today at least that is pursuing the Lord and encouraging pastors to invest and to pray. That was the focus that really struck me, is that we would be churches that are praying for a movement of God in our
yeah,
state.
yeah,
And so it got me excited about our convention, to
good,
be honest.
good.
And I,
Nathan Lorick, now
yes,
leading
Nathan
the
Lorick,
convention, a
yes,
young guy, and I mean on fire for the Lord. And
yes. And our current president, Todd, can't say his last name, but out of Longview.
yes,
And they just really impressed me. And then on top of all that, just being excited, then you were honored at that convention
yeah,
with a Legacy Leadership Award for your 50 years
Whew.
of service and then your service to the convention. Given the story that you've just told from BMA to SBC, what did that mean for you to be recognized in front of the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention and then to be given that standing ovation down there in Corpus Christi?
There was my emotions were kind of all over the map, but I was very grateful, and I have been so grateful to the Father for giving me, and looking back, just giving me the privilege of being at one church,
Mm,
all these years, seeing His hand of favor and His hand of blessing, um, doing the work that it's been doing, um, and for such a large convention to for the guys to say, um, what you've done, what you've let the Lord do through you at Harmony Hill just really means something to us. Um, that was real special in that I felt like that God, um, that in part I did what God put me here to do. To
mm,
just, I've always I wanted to be an encourager. Um, I think that is what has been at the heart of the growth here, is that I wanna be an encourager, that, um, that when you walk with the Lord, that there is a good future, there's a hope, and, that God's got a plan for us, um, and that there's a race for us to run, and nobody can run it but us, and God said, "If you run the race, I'll be with you, my hand will be with you, as you come in and as you go out." And, so, uh yeah, all the time I was standing there, I was just saying, "Lord, you know, you and I both know why I'm standing up here,
mm,
and it's you." And I wanted to convey that and get that across, but I hope that that will be an encouragement, that there will be more men as time goes on, and they may not do 50 years, but that their time in the saddle, so to speak, if it's 25, if it's 30, 35, whatever, that they're at the end of their race. It's like, okay, I've done what God put me here to do, or maybe I physically can't do anymore, or I'm aging out. Um, but the thing is, and it's kind of what I'm talking about Sunday, that we run the race that God's put in front of us,
mm.
and that was, it was Paul's thing. He says, I want to run the race that God has called me to, and and hear Him say, "Well done." So uh, that all that was going through my mind when I got the Legacy Award. So it was huge. It really was. And Todd, I yearn for the day when, when I'll hear that I want to hear the Father say, "Well done," and that's what I pray to hear. So,
Amen. Well, Pastor John, thank you for walking us through our conventional history here on the Hill, and I hope that you've enjoyed it if you're watching or listening, and I hope you'll catch us on the next episode of the Legacy Podcast. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, share, drop a review. Let people know about it so that we can grow the audience so that they can hear about what God's been doing in Pastor John and here on the Hill over the last 50 years. We'd also love to have you come and join us for in-person worship on the Hill.